Well, we should probably know by now that when it comes to the Cleveland Browns going up against history, history usually wins. Hey guys, Oliver here, aka UK Browns NFL, and this is my review of the Cleveland Browns 27-14 loss against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Week 14. Losing sucks, but losing to that team sucks the most. The Browns are now 3-10. Let me say that again because it doesn't even feel real. The Browns are 3-10. With this loss, they are now officially eliminated from the NFL playoffs, although I must admit, it's kind of felt that way since about week 3 anyway. They had a chance to achieve their first season series sweep over the Steelers since 1988, and they failed. The wait for, the first in my lifetime goes on. I've talked ad nauseum about how disappointing this season has been for the Browns. There's not really much more I can add to it at this point without sounding like I'm just beating a dead horse. We'll have all off-season to talk about what went wrong, this year. I think you'll find we know exactly what went wrong. So I'll save the theatrics for when it's March and we've got nothing to talk about. I'm kidding. I've got loads of exciting things planned for this channel during the off-season. One of the best things about the NFL is that it is 24/7, even in the off-season. But before we get to that, we still have this game and 4 games to talk about and go through. So let's get into this game and talk about what is now the 7th loss out of 9 games since I started my channel. You'd think I'd be pretty used to this by now. So the Browns won the coin toss. I think they've won more coin tosses in the last 6 weeks than, the previous 3 years, it would feel like. But they did win the coin toss again this week, elected to defer. The Steelers started with a 3 and out. Great start from the defense, even though they gave up a penalty. So it was 1st and 5 on their very first play of the game after an offsides penalty, and the Browns were still able to, respond with a 3 and out. So good start from the defense, but then on cue, as it seems to have been quite a lot this year, the Browns also go 3 and out on their first offensive drive. The Steelers then respond to that with their second drive with a field goal. I think it was a 5-play drive in the end after a pretty bad punt from Corey. And Chris Boswell, as he always seems to do, made the 30-yard field goal to put the Steelers up 3-0, first points on the board. The Browns then respond, their best drive of the day, a 7-play, 70-yard drive that included a pretty good diving catch from Elijah Moore, 20-yard play from him on 2nd and 10. And it was capped off by 35-yard touchdown pass to Jerry Jeudy. Who else? The man of the hour. At the minute, 3rd and 9. As I said, it was a big play. At that point, you're likely going to attempt a field goal, and the way it's been going with Hopkins, no one really wanted to see him attempt a field goal. And so luckily, Jameis was able to scramble around a little bit. It looked like he was just at that line of scrimmage. But he was able to make a pretty good throw to Jeudy to continue Judy's good play. The Browns defense then continued their good start. Another 3 and out on the Steelers. The Browns, though, they ended up punting it back. I mean, to be honest, this became a bit of a punt fest early on in this game, exchanging quite a lot of punts early. Then the Browns threw a interception, Jameis Winston's first interception of the day, the middle of the field to Benton. And that was at the Cleveland's 42-yard line, so not giving the defense the best field position there. And the Steelers responded with a touchdown, 5-play, 31 yards. As I said, with the good field position, were able to get down to the Cleveland's 1-yard line, and Najee Harris was able to punch it in for their first touchdown of the game to put the score 10-7. Again, more punts from the Browns. The Steelers add another field goal to take this score to 13-7, and then the Browns attempt their first field goal. It was a really good drive, 12-play drive, multiple 3rd down conversions on this drive. They did make it difficult for themselves, and then Hopkins steps up for the 38-yard field goal. And as I said, from 38 yards, you should be feeling, certainly confident that he's going to make it. But the way this season's been going, I don't think any of us felt confident. And that confidence, that lack of confidence proved to be true, with him missing the 38-yard field goal just before the half. So that ended the half 13-7. But the Browns did get the ball to start the half, so you thought, they could go get a score here. They're still, right in this game. They go and miss another field goal. It's almost, I say almost laughable. It is laughable at this point, just how nightmarish this season has been from Dustin Hopkins. You just don't feel confident with any of the kicks that he's stepping up to take this year. This one was 43 yards, granted a little bit longer than the previous miss, but again, last year if you said that you wouldn't feel confident about Dustin Hopkins stepping up to take a 43-yarder, you'd have laughed. Just a crazy downfall, really. And at this point, you're thinking, well, let's just not kick. We're losing in this game anyway, so let's just not kick the field goals. I said it in the preview. I wanted to go for most fourth downs in this game anyway, just because this is it. We've got nothing to lose. And at this point, I was fully on board with that way of thinking. The Steelers were then able to start to slip away and build their lead in this game. 8-play, 67-yard touchdown drive, which was tapped off by a 10-yard touchdown pass from Russell Wilson to Van Jefferson, who we all mocked in the off-season that Van Jefferson was their second wide receiver. He's had a fairly decent year, so some credit to him. Obviously, with George Pickens being out in this one, the Browns then responded with a turnover on downs, so just to add to the kind of spiral this offense was going down in. Steelers kind of then put the game out of hand, even in the third quarter with a quick touchdown after that, which was capped off by, a pretty great throw from Russell Wilson to Pat Freiermuth, in between two defenders for 20 yards and the touchdown, put the score up to 27-7. As I said, with the way that the Browns were playing at this point, it felt like this was kind of out of reach already at this point. Back-to-back punts then from the Browns and the Steelers. The Browns were able to go on another touchdown drive, 14 plays, 79 yards, multiple third down conversions and fourth down conversions on this drive, which was capped off with a 15 yards touchdown grab from David Njoku. Pretty good catch. He did have a few bad plays in this game. He was, whining a little bit more than I would like to see at the refs quite a lot. But, this is what David Njoku does best. If you high point that ball, more times than not, he will go up and get it. And he was able to do that for that touchdown. Bring the score back to 2 scores. Still, I think there was still 7 minutes left at this point. So, still time. And then with the next play for the Browns, they caused a fumble on the Steelers. So at this point, as I said, there's still time. They're only down 2 scores. There's about 6-7 minutes left. And, they've got the momentum. So you're thinking, wow, okay, maybe this game isn't going to end as easily as we thought it did 5-6 minutes prior when the Steelers went up 3 scores. But quickly ended with a Jameis Winston interception, his second interception of the day. I mean, at that point, you need to score. You need to score. You're in a 2-minute drill. You need to score quickly. I don't hate the pass attempt that he was going for more. You need to try and, as I said, you need to go and score in that situation. So you need to take the big plays when they come, but just wasn't able to be accurate with the ball, and it was intercepted at the Pittsburgh 18-yard line. At this point, it kind of felt like that was, as I said, it already felt like the game was over. The Browns had a little bit of a momentum shift. They were able to make it slightly interesting. But with that interception, you felt like the game was over. But the defense stepped up. They did their job. They got a 3 and out. They only took a minute of clock. And they forced the Steelers into a punt. So I think there was about 3 minutes left at this point. Obviously unlikely, but there's still a chance. But that was completely buried and ended when Kadarius Toney muffs a punt and turns the ball over to the Steelers, who were able to go and get the 1 first down required before they could kneel the ball out and end this game, beating the Browns 27-14. in their home field for what is now, the 19th straight year. Just a pretty crazy record at this point. Jameis Winston in this game finished 24 for 41, 212 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He was sacked 3 times. Nick Chubb had 11 carries for 48 yards, no touchdowns. Jerry Jeudy led all receivers with 5 receptions for 64 yards and a touchdown. And then on the Steelers side, Russell Wilson, who wasn't really that good in this game, to be honest, 15 for 26, 158 yards, but 2 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. That's the important stat there. Najee Harris led their rushing, 16 carries, 53 yards. And Pat Freiermuth was their leading receiver with 3 receptions for 48 yards. So why did the Browns lose this game? Because they're a worse team than the Steelers. I wish it wasn't that simple, but unfortunately, this is just a better football team. This Browns team, was, in my opinion, a better team on paper than the Steelers coming into this season. However, football is not played on paper, and through 14 weeks of the season, the Steelers are a much better football team. If the record wasn't a big enough indicator of that, then this game certainly was a reminder. Regarding the actual game itself, I think the defense deserve the least of the blame for this loss. A familiar story this year, it seems. They gave up 27 points, but realistically, 17 of those points were mostly at fault by the offense and the special teams through turnovers and bad field position. I said in my keys to victory for this game that the Browns would have to get pressure on Russell Wilson and limit the Steelers' run game. They actually did a fairly decent job in limiting the Steelers' run game. Once again, for the second time this season, they kept them below their season average of rushing yards a game and held them to just 3.4 yards per carry. So a pretty decent job overall. They weren't able to get consistent pressure on Wilson in this game, but they were able to cause him some distress at times, especially more towards the end of this game where, Miles had the only sack of the game. Wilson wasn't very good in this game, just 158 passing yards on 15 for 26 completions. But as I said, he did throw for 2 touchdowns and was able to make, the plays that he needed to. I think my biggest, if not only gripe with the defense in this game was just, there was quite a few occasions where they were able to execute on, clutch plays. They just weren't able to make the plays when they needed to a lot of the times in this game, which resulted in the Steelers going, I think, 6 for 14 on 3rd downs. And, just being able to execute on multiple drives despite their offense not playing actually that well. But as I said, the defense deserves the least amount of blame in this game. After a quiet start to the game, Miles started to cause quite a lot of havoc in the Steelers' backfield, resulting in a huge tackle for loss and a sack in the 4th quarter alone, giving his team every chance to get back into this game. And for any potential Steelers fans listening, yes, he still outplayed Watt, and yes, he's still a better pass rusher. I also thought Mahmoud Diabate was excellent, especially early in this game. He's had a pretty good game overall, which I think is definitely worth mentioning. He's played well in JOK's absence, and hopefully it's something to build on moving forward. Okay, let's talk about Jameis. I've said it, you've said it, we've all said it. You've got to take the good with the bad with Jameis. He threw two pretty awful picks in this game and was pretty bad overall. I mean, early on, the Steelers' defense were able to overwhelm him, and it looked, like it could get pretty ugly. He was able to somewhat steady the ship, but outside of the touchdown throw to Jeudy and, a few other nice throws in this game, he wasn't particularly great. But honestly, at this point, it kind of just is what it is for me personally. It doesn't change how I view Jameis going forward. I know people are, quick to go full throttle in either direction when it comes to saying, oh, we should re-sign Jameis, right now after a good game, or that he should never play again after a bad one. For me, Jameis is an option for next year as the bridge. And whilst I personally would be down with that idea and have said as much, that doesn't mean they shouldn't explore other options. If they can find a better option that works for them, then great. this game, and to be honest, any of the 4 remaining games aren't going to change that. We've seen what Jameis can do in this offense. It's not sustainable long term, but it could work for a year in a bridge situation. Browns YouTuber Quincy Carrier, one of the best out there, he said it perfectly. The only thing anyone should be certain about when it comes to the quarterback position next year is that Deshaun Watson shouldn't be involved in those plans. I say all of that to say that yes, Jameis was awful in this game and was a big reason why we lost. But I don't think this one game should change how you view him as an option for this team. And I mean, with the DTR stuff, look, I want a Browns draft pick to be the saviour more than anybody, trust me. But this whole kind of like, oh, we should put DTR in to see what we have stuff just doesn't make that much sense to me when I feel like we kind of already have seen what we have. Nothing against the kid. I think he's a great guy and I'm rooting for him. But I just think he's a limited quarterback and will always be a limited quarterback. I would absolutely love to be proved wrong. I really, really would. But it's just how I view it. So because of that, I just don't see the point of bringing him in for Jameis. I mean, even though Stefanski, hasn't committed to Jameis as the starter going forward, I just still don't really see the point. The team is 3-10. At this point, it's just about developing the young skill position guys, really. We've seen what positive impact Winston has had on Judy since he's been the starter. So and said as well. So hopefully that can translate with the other guys, as I mentioned, said Thrash, Woods, over the last 4 games. And speaking of Judy, 5 catches for 65 yards and a touchdown. It's actually his worst game statistically since Winston became the starter, yet still had more yards in this game than 5 of the 7 games he played with Watson, and the same amount of touchdowns as those 7 games combined. I've said it multiple times over the last few weeks, he is the wide receiver 1 next year. He's shown, what he can do with competent quarterback play. His stats since Winston took over as the starter, averaged out over a 17-game season, would significantly break both the Browns' season receiving yards and receptions record. I think it'd be about 1,900 yards and 107 receptions is what it would average out at. But, of course, that is just projected stats. But, it does show you just how good Judy has been over the last 6 games. As I said last week, if he can continue this level of production, then his extension in the off-season is going to look like pennies on the dollar. Hopefully Sed can, get back onto the field as soon as possible, and we can evaluate, what is potentially an exciting young wide receiver duo over these last 4 games. The Browns' run game was also improved in this game, in what was an emotional return to the field that he suffered his horrific knee injury on last year. I thought Nick Chubb looked, fairly explosive and took positive strides towards returning, to some version of his former self. Just 11 carries for 48 yards, but, a couple of great runs, including a really good 19-yard run, chunk play. Whilst I think the Browns need to heavily invest in this run game this off-season, I do still believe that Nick Chubb, can be a big part of that going forward. With all this positive talk, you'd think that the Browns won this game. See, I told you guys, I am the optimistic Browns fan. But yeah, the Browns offense wasn't good enough in this game. We've seen it time and time again this season. They need to address the O-line and this run game because it's becoming a detriment to the team. Winston was under constant pressure and, whilst the run game, as I said, was slightly improved in this game from previous weeks, it still wasn't good enough. They also need to address the 3rd down stuff because it's actually getting hilariously bad just how awful this team is on 3rd down. We all remember the stats early on in the season when they failed to convert on 26 consecutive 3rd down attempts. And at one point had the worst 3rd down percentage through the first few weeks of a season in NFL history. Whilst it's slightly improved since Winston took over, it's still not great. Just 2 for 13 on 3rd down in this game. Funnily enough, though, they've actually been pretty good on 4th down this year, which makes me think it has to be a play calling issue. if they sucked at both, then you could make the argument that these players are just soft as baby crap and can't handle the pressure or something like that. But like, they are literally 7th in the NFL in fourth down percentage, the most pressure down in football. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, but Oliver, they don't attempt many fourth downs, so the numbers are skewed. To which I say, they literally lead the NFL in fourth down attempts a game. Only one other team that is in the top 5 of fourth down conversion percentage are even in the top 20 of fourth down attempts. And they average nearly a whole attempt less than the Browns. Combined with the O-line's inability to block, it has to be the play calling. I don't expect Dorsey to be here next year, and I think it's for the best. I've seen Kevin run multiple top 10 offenses, man. It's just so annoying that we had to try and change all of that for a quarterback that is literally cheeks. I'm getting heated, but this is what losing to the Steelers does to me, man. But lastly, to get it off my chest before I do actually pop a blood vessel, this special teams is so bad, it's genuinely painful to watch. Now the Hopkins stuff is what it is. He was one of our best players last year. This year, he's been arguably our worst. Well, second worst. You extended him, so you've got to ride it out for this year regardless. If he costs you a game over these last 4, then so be it. You're 3-10. It's not really going to make much of a difference. But you have to, at the very minimum, bring in competition for him this offseason. And no, I certainly do not mean drafting a kicker. Go and sign a kicker. Go sign the best kicker from the USFL. Have a competition. If Hopkins beats him, maybe this year was just a blip. But where I have the real issue is with Bubba Ventrone. I want to like the guy, man. I do like the guy. I mean, he looked really cool last year wearing the helmet in the locker room. But he's just not a very good special teams coordinator. The punt coverages, the kickoff coverages, the fact they haven't been able to find a punt returner for 2 years, it's all bad. It's really bad. It's not his fault that Hopkins has been bad this year, but the deficiencies in the coverage units are particularly highlighted even more when your kicker can't make kicks. This isn't a new problem. The coverages weren't great last year. The returns weren't great last year, but Hopkins and Corey were so good that you kind of forgot about it. And that's just not the case this year. Well, obviously not with Corey, my Lord and Saviour, Corey Bojorquez. He had one bad punt in this game, but I doubt it was his fault because he is faultless and has been excellent outside of that. I think Bubba has to go, man, or you've got to find someone else to be the special teams coordinator and demote Bubba to a smaller role because, this will cost us games. And if we want to be a serious team next year, we can't have that. Why is Kadarius Toney returning punts? We all knew some weird shit was going to happen if that was the case. And what happened? He had a few good returns. Then he does some weird shit and muffs a punt, which essentially ends any small chance of the Browns coming back in the game. I'd maybe have some more grace if you hadn't spent 2 years trying to find someone to return punts. Why is this so hard? Why can other teams just find guys off the streets to return punts and we can't find one damn guy? But yeah, Bubba's got to go and they got to fix this special teams, man, because at this point, they're giving the offense a run for their money as the worst unit this year, and that's saying something. Overall, just a pretty tough game to watch, and in the end, the Browns were beaten pretty comfortably. It's annoying because I know how Steelers fans are going to spin it about how, we only won in week 12 because of the snow, and I hate to admit it, but the Browns gave them some fuel to that fire with their performance on Sunday in much better conditions, despite how ridiculous of a claim that is. As I said in the intro, I've talked ad nauseum about how disappointing this season has been. We're 3-10, man. I'm not going to bore you guys with more of that now. A first season series sweep over the Steelers in my lifetime would have certainly made this season slightly easier to swallow. But unfortunately, as it always tends to do, history got the better of Browns. Since we last won in Pittsburgh, they hired Mike Tomlin and had 18 consecutive winning seasons. It makes me sick to my stomach, man. Fuck the Steelers. I never like to end on a negative note. So, cheer up, Browns fans. We have the 12-1 Chiefs next week. Well, look, at least it's the holiday season. Plus, we have a chance to play spoiler for the Ravens and the Bengals. Now, whilst they aren't the Steelers, they're close enough. That will do it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy my content, then please drop this video a like, hit the subscribe button. It's free and it really helps out my channel. You can also check the links in the description to see where you can connect and interact with me on social media. I'm trying to build a community of Cleveland Browns fans, and as I always say, even if I only get to talk to one fan a day, I'm happy because I'm talking Browns football with the best fan base in the world. Thanks again for watching, have a great week, and most importantly, go Browns.